Hey everyone, this is Liz. I'm going to show you how to make a gravity-defying airplane cake. The first thing we need to do is make our airplane. So I'm going to knead up a bit of red fondant mixed with a little bit of Tylose powder to make it a little bit stiffer and will help it to dry firm. This is just my LMF fondant. And we're going to use a drinking straw and just insert it into our ball of fondant. Don't go all the way through. And now we're going to shape it into a torpedo shape. I guess that's the only kind of shape I can really describe it as. Just using my hands to round out the front and point the end. I have a little bit of shortening on my hands too to kind of make it shiny and keep everything from sticking. Don't make this airplane too big because we don't want it to be heavy. We're going to use a large ball tool to make a little indentation on the top of our plane. This is where our bear is going to sit. And then flip the whole thing over. And with the indentation down, we're going to smooth out the bottom so it's nicely rounded. And the top area where the indentation is going to be flat. So we've got that all shaped. Now we're going to take a toothpick and insert it into the right side of the plane over the top of where the straw is inserted. And this is going to be our supports for the wings. And remember, always let your clients know when there are things like toothpicks or wires in your toppers so that they don't accidentally eat something that is inedible. So now we're going to make the wings. For this I'm using white gum paste. And you could use pretty much any kind of rounded cutter for the wings, whether it's like a leaf cutter or an oval cutter. Just make sure that they're proportionate to your plane. So I'm going to be using just like a little oval cutter that I have that I actually just made from a round cutter. I just squished it into an oval shape. We're going to roll our gum paste to about 1/4 inch. Make 2 wings. And then kind of measure about how long your wings need to be. I just used my X-Acto blade to kind of guesstimate, made them slightly longer, and then just cut off the ends so that they're nice and flat. We're going to let those dry. We don't want them to dry rock hard. We're just going to let them dry for like an hour or so, just so that they're firm enough that they will be stable. We're going to cut one end of a piece of gum paste so that it's flat, and then use another cutter, rounded cutter, to make 3 little, basically oval shapes with flat sides. So whatever you want to do to make that shape, whether you make an oval and you cut it in half, or you use a circle and you cut one end off. We just need kind of a rounded shape with one flat end. And we're going to let those set up. Now we're going to make the propeller. I'm using a hydrangea cutter, I believe is what this, I don't think it's a hydrangea cutter. I don't know what this is. So 4 petal flower cutter, but it looks kind of like a propeller. It's got pointy tips. And I'm just going to cut off one of the petals, and that's going to be my 3-pronged propeller. If you didn't have something that was 4 petals, you could just individually cut 3 pieces and attach them to a little round ball of gum paste, but use what you got. And I'm going to glue this 3-pronged propeller to a small ball of flattened white gum paste. Give it some stability. Don't want our propellers to break off. And now we're going to roll a small, about a pea-sized piece of red fondant and point to one end of it and flatten the other. Make a little triangle. and place that right on the front. We're going to let this dry as well. This will be our cute little propeller. So this is another cutter that you could use if you didn't have this cutter. So now that our propellers and wings and everything have been drying, I'm going to pre-poke a hole into the wings so that they slide onto the toothpicks fairly easy, and just attach them with a bit of water. Just be gentle that you don't crack anything. And we're going to do the same thing with the back propeller areas. I'm going to pre-poke a hole into the plane, or insert a little toothpick into each part of the propeller, and then pre-poke our holes into the plane and attach with a little bit of water. Or you could use piping gel or whatever kind of glue that you use for when you're making toppers. The reason we pre-poke our holes is so that we don't accidentally shove the toothpicks in. We don't ruin our pieces basically by when we're shoving them into the toothpicks that they stab out the other side, because these are not fully dry. We don't want the toothpick to be too long either. You could use royal icing or melted chocolate if you wanted something that was totally edible. Usually people don't eat these little toppers though. They think they're too cute. So put a little plastic wrap underneath the wings to support them as they dry. And now we're going to insert the toothpick into the front of the plane to pre-drill a hole. Put a little water on there. And then we're going to put our toothpick into the back of the propeller. You can still see it's kind of soft. And then place that into the front so that our plane has a propeller. And if we hadn't have pre-poked that hole, the toothpick probably would have poked out the front of the propeller. So now we're going to add a little white detail to the seat area of the plane. Just a little water. And we're going to roll out a piece of our gum paste and use two piping tips or hole cutters, whatever you have, circle cutters. Basically one that's bigger than the hole in the plane and one that's about the same size as the hole, so that we can create a circular shape to go on top of that area. Just make sure your center hole is perfectly centered so that it's the same distance all the way around. Press straight down, twist, and then we have a nice little clean piece to go around the seat area. It's just those little details. I also have a star cutter, so I'm going to add a couple of cute little stars to the front of the plane on either side. Just another little touch to make it cute. You could even do like a letter. If this was for a kid's birthday, then you could, their name was Aaron, you could do a little letter A, or, something like that. And if it was for a girl, I mean, you could do like a different colored plane. It doesn't have to be red. I don't want to say pink because girls don't necessarily love pink, but you know what I'm saying. You can customize it. So now we're going to make our cute little bear pilot. We're going to get the inside of the seat area a little bit wet, just a little water. And I'm going to roll a small ball of brown fondant mixed with Tylose. Oh, I'm going to chop off the extra straw. I don't need that anymore. Just insert the little ball of brown fondant into the seat area. Make sure it's not too big. Just flatten out the top a wee bit and dampen with some water. And also dampen a couple places right in front for where the hands are going to go. And just roll out a couple of teardrop shaped pieces of fondant, and those are going to be the arms. Nothing too fancy. Just make sure everything's proportional. You know, it's a lot. Things are a lot smaller than you think. It doesn't take a lot. Roll out a round piece of the fondant for the head. I'm going to create two small little holes with my tiny little ball tool here for where the eyes are going to go, and put those right in the center of the sphere and wide apart. When you make eyeballs that are right in the center of a head and wide apart, it just makes them look really cute, really young. It's just kind of a little trick. Two little small round balls for the nose. Just like that. Real fine detail work here. And then another teeny tiny one for the bottom mouth area. Looking cute. And now we're going to roll a very small piece of black fondant for the eyes and nose. The nose is just a round piece that's slightly pointed on one side to be the nose. And then the eyes, very, very small, inserted into the area that we indented. Pardon my nails. I've been coloring fondant all day, so got purple and pink and green nails. So we put the head on top of the body, and we're going to get the top of his head a little bit wet, and we're going to make him a cute little hat. But first we're going to make his ears. Just take a small piece of brown fondant, roll it into a ball, flatten it slightly, and then make a little indentation with the ball tool. And we're just going to cut that in half and set that aside while we're making the hat. Use the tip of your X-Acto knife to create a couple little stitches on his head if you feel like it. Take a small piece of black fondant, flatten it out onto the table. We're going to be creating basically something that's like an oval with two little strips on the end, and that's going to be his hat. Just kind of draw out the shape just roughly. Make sure your strips are both the same size. And I'm just going to place this right on top of his head. Cute, cute, cute. It looks like he has a little I don't know what it's called, pilot hat? Aviator hat? Put his ears on. So now combine a piece of white fondant with a little piece of black to make some gray. Flatten it out and use a small piping tip to create a couple of little circles, and these are going to be the goggle portion of his aviator's hat. There he is, very cute. You could do a kitty or a puppy or something, other kind of animal, but bears are pretty popular. So to make our cake portion, I'm just coloring some fondant with some Americolor Sky Blue. This is just my LMF fondant, and I'm just kneading it to mix in the color. And I'm assuming that you know how to ice and fill an 8-inch round cake, so I'm not going to go through that portion with you. But I just wanted to show you kind of how I prepped my cake, and I'm actually using styrofoam, so imagine that this is real cake, but I'm going to put it on top of still an 8-inch cardboard round. So if this was our finished iced cake, it would go on top of an 8-inch cardboard round. And what I need you to do is take an X-Acto blade and cut a little X into the center of your cardboard round, and that's going to be where our wire is going to thread through our cake. If this was real cake, that's very important. And then to create our structure, we're going to start with a piece of wire, anodized coated wire that's probably, I'd say, about 2 feet long. And if you go to my Amazon shop in my preferred tools section, you can see the wire that I use. It's the blue wire. I think it's like 18 gauge or 12 gauge. I can't remember exactly, but it's nice, sturdy, thick wire, and it's coated, so it's perfectly safe to go a bit up against your cake. It's not going to rust or anything like that. So I'm just covering my cake real quick with the fondant, smoothing it out, cutting off the excess, using my turntable extender from the from sugarworks.com. Love that. Love my table extender. So here's our 2-foot piece of wire, and I'm using a board from cakesupportsolutions.com because they're pre-coated and they already have a hole in the center. And but you could just use any kind of board with a hole in the center as long as it was sturdy. And I'm just using a glue gun to secure the wire. I've just looped the wire and then folded it over and then just gluing it to the base of the board. And this is going to support our airplane. Obviously, let it dry and then flip your board over and straighten out your wire so that it's easy to thread the cake onto the wire. And I had a little bit of a tough time with this because I'm using a styrofoam cake, so it doesn't want to thread through very easily. But obviously when you use real cake, it goes on real simple because the weight of the cake pushes down through. But just line it up with the hole on the cardboard round, supporting it, keeping it flat. Don't tilt so that the wire goes straight through. And then just press down, and the weight of the cake will push down through the wire, and you'll have this nice long wire poking out the top. If you've got any pieces of cake that poked through, just remove those and don't worry about it because the hole is going to get covered by the clouds. So I'm going to show you a couple of different ways to make numbers. Here's a 2, and a 3, just using pliers to just kind of rework the wire. It's fairly easy to bend. So 4, always make sure that the end piece of the wire is kind of shooting upwards because it's a plane, it's flying up. And a 5. And lastly, I'm going to do a 6 because I didn't want my wire to break from bending it so much. But you get the idea how you can easily make different numbers by just bending your wire into that shape. So I'm using a cloud-shaped cookie cutter that I got off of Amazon. You can use whatever cloud cookie cutter you have, or if you want this one, you can look at my preferred tools list on my Amazon store. It's just a couple bucks. And you just roll out a piece of white fondant, put a piece of plastic over it, and then use your cookie cutter to cut out the shapes, and that makes the clouds kind of rounded, which I think is cute. Then I just use my fingers to sort of smooth out the rough edges. And we're just going to apply those to the sides of the cake with a little bit of water. And between each cloud, we're just going to make a couple of balls of white fondant to just sort of, you know, break up the blank space between the clouds. Pretty straightforward, but adds a nice detail to the bottom of the cake, so it really feels like our plane is flying up above the clouds. So to start covering our wire, we're going to roll out strips of fondant that are fat on one end and get skinnier towards the other end, because we don't want the clouds to be all one thickness. We want them to kind of get thick and thin, and that really looks like a cloud. So you just kind of wrap around the base of the wire and cover up the hole of where the wire is going into the cake, and just continue making long snakes of fondant that are fat on one end and thinner on the other, and wrapping them tightly around the wire. If you're having problems with your fondant slipping off, then you could cover the wire in a little bit of tape, and that would help it grab on and stick. So you see how we start thin and then it gets fatter, and then we can do another piece and it starts thin and then it gets fatter, so on and so forth. And then our last piece, we're going to stop a couple inches before we get to the very end of the wire, because we want to have enough room for our airplane to slide onto the wire. We're just going to add a little bit of glue into the straw and just glue that right onto the end of the finished wire. And that's basically it, guys. That's how you do the gravity defying airplane cake. Looks pretty cute, huh? Thank you guys so much for voting for this cake. I really enjoyed making it for you. I hope you learned a lot. And I can't wait to see your gravity defying airplane cakes. You could also do like a spaceship. You could do like a bird. This structure translates to a lot of really fun flying type cakes. So hopefully you felt like you could imagine other types of cakes that you could do with this type of structure. If you have any questions or you have any problems, feel free to message me on Patreon or on my Facebook page, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. You could also leave a comment underneath the YouTube video. And thanks again for watching and supporting Artisan Cake Company, and I'll see you guys later.